Hello, adventurers from the past. Are you ready to unravel one of the most epic mysteries in history? Today we will delve into the conflict that shook the ancient world, the Trojan War. But this is not a simple recounting of battles and heroes. We will delve into the hidden secrets, separating reality from myth, and revealing whether this legendary war was a real historical event or a masterful literary creation. Prepare for an epic journey where history and legend collide. Let's go there. The Trojan War is one of the most famous stories in Greek mythology, immortalized by the poet Homer in his works, the Iliad and the Odyssey. According to legend, the war began with the kidnapping of Helen, the wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta, by Paris, prince of Troy. This offense led a coalition of Greek armies, led by Agamemnon, to besiege the city of Troy for 10 long years. Finally, thanks to the famous wooden horse stratagem, the Greeks managed to enter the city and defeat the Trojans. However, beyond the epic narrative, many questions arise. Was there really a Trojan War? Who were the real protagonists? And, most importantly, how do we know what we know? Let's start with the origins of the myth. Homer, the epic poet of ancient Greece, is our primary source for understanding the Trojan War. The Iliad and the Odyssey are believed to have been composed in the 8th century BC, centuries after the events they describe. These works not only narrate the war, but also reflect the culture, beliefs, and tensions of the time in which they were written. The figure of Homer is shrouded in mystery, some even doubt his existence as a single individual, suggesting that the epics could be the work of multiple authors. The Iliad focuses on a brief period of the Trojan War, highlighting the wrath of Achilles and the repercussions of it. However, this epic does not provide a complete history of the conflict, instead focusing on specific episodes and key characters. The narrative is filled with divine interventions, superhuman heroes, and acts of bravery and betrayal, adding a mythical layer to the events described. It is important to remember that Homer writes in a style that blends history and mythology, creating a literary work that has fascinated generations. In addition to Homer, other Greek sources also contribute to the myth of Troy. Tragic poets such as Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, as well as historians Herodotus and Thucydides, offer their own versions and details about the war. These later works often build on the Iliad and the Odyssey, but they also add new perspectives and elements, further enriching and complicating the myth. These various sources reflect the importance of the Troy theme in ancient Greek culture and its lasting impact. Greek mythology, with its rich oral tradition, played a crucial role in the formation and transmission of the story of the Trojan War. Before being written down, stories about Troy would have been told and retold by generations of bards, at festivals and gatherings. This oral tradition ensured that each narrator could adapt the story, adding details or emphasizing certain aspects depending on his audience. This explains why there are so many versions and variations of the Trojan myth. Finally, it is essential to consider the historical context in which these myths emerged. The Greek Dark Ages, the period between the fall of the Mycenaean civilization and the rise of the polis, was a time of great change and upheaval. Tales of heroic wars and magnificent cities like Troy may have served as a link to a glorious past and as a way to understand and overcome contemporary difficulties. In this way, the myth of the Trojan War is not only a story of conflict, but also an expression of identity and cultural memory for the ancient Greeks. To understand if the Trojan War was a real event, we must turn to archaeology. Heinrich Schliemann, a German archaeologist, was one of the first to attempt to identify the location of Troy. In the 1870s, Schliemann began excavations at Hazarlik, in modern-day Turkey, and claimed to have found the city of Troy. Excavations revealed a series of cities built on top of each other, indicating that the site had been inhabited for thousands of years. The city believed to correspond to Homeric Troy is known as Troy Viae, which shows signs of violent destruction around 1200 BC, a date that could coincide with the era described by Homer. However, archaeological evidence alone cannot confirm the existence of a war as specific and detailed as that recounted in the Iliad. What we can affirm is that there was a city called Troy that suffered significant destruction in a period that could coincide with the mythical conflict. In addition to archaeological evidence, we also have historical sources that can shed light on the Trojan War. One of the most relevant texts is the Catalogue of Ships in the Iliad, which lists the Greek contingents that participated in the war. Some historians believe that this catalogue could reflect a real memory of a coalition of Greek city-states that participated in a military campaign. Other ancient texts, such as the writings of Herodotus and Thucydides, also mention the Trojan War, although with a mixture of skepticism and acceptance. Herodotus, known as the father of history, wrote in the 5th century BC and suggested that the war was a real historical event, although influenced by mythology. On the other hand, Thucydides, a more critical historian, recognized the possibility of historical conflict, but questioned many of the fantastic details presented by Homer. This more skeptical perspective reminds us of the importance of separating myth from reality when studying ancient history. Let us now analyze some of the most emblematic characters of the Trojan War and evaluate their historical basis. Helena, whose legendary beauty supposedly caused the war, is one of the most fascinating characters. In the Iliad, she is portrayed as the most beautiful woman in the world, whose abduction by Paris triggers the conflict. However, did a woman like Helena really exist? The figure of Helen could have been a personification of the tensions and rivalries between the different Greek city-states and the kingdoms of Asia Minor. Her story, full of passion and tragedy, is a powerful metaphor, but there is no concrete evidence of her existence as a real individual. Additionally, in other versions of the myth, Helen never reached Troy and was taken to Egypt, adding more complexity to her legendary figure. Achilles, the invincible Greek warrior with the famously vulnerable heel of his, is another key character. The figure of Achilles represents the archetype of the Greek hero, brave, strong, and with a tragic destiny. The existence of a warrior like Achilles is difficult to prove historically, but it is possible that his character is based on real military leaders whose exploits were exaggerated over time. The accounts of his mother, Thetis, immersing him in the river Styx to make him invulnerable, and his devastating rage, nearly changing the course of the war, place him firmly in the realm of mythology rather than history. Documented. Hector, the noble defender of Troy and rival of Achilles, is another central character. His bravery and sense of duty make him a tragic hero. As with Achilles, Hector could represent an actual Trojan leader or be an amalgam of several individuals who defended the city against invaders. In the Iliad, Hector is presented as the pillar of the Trojan resistance, a character whose heroic actions and his death at the hands of Achilles are some of the play's most moving moments. His figure symbolizes the desperate and heroic defense of Troy against the Greek aggressors. The wooden horse is perhaps the most iconic symbol of the Trojan War. According to legend, the Greeks built a huge hollow horse and left it outside the walls of Troy as a peace offering. The Trojans, believing it to be a gift, carried it into the city, allowing the Greek soldiers hidden inside to open the city gates during the night. The historicity of the Trojan horse is highly debated. Some archaeologists and scholars suggest that it could have been a metaphor for a battering ram or some other military strategy used to penetrate the city's defenses. However, there is no concrete evidence to confirm the existence of the horse as Homer describes it, and it could simply be an ingenious fiction to dramatize Greek cunning. The Trojan War is full of mythical characters and elements that enrich its narrative. Figures such as Patroclus, Achilles' close friend and companion in arms, and Cassandra, the cursed prophetess who predicted the fall of Troy but was never believed, add layers of drama and tragedy to the story. The gods of Olympus, with their capricious interventions and personal conflicts, play a crucial role in the development of events. The presence of these characters and elements underscores how mythology and reality intertwine, creating a complex narrative that has captured the imagination for centuries. Although many of these aspects are clearly fictional, they reflect the beliefs, values, and fears of the cultures that created them. To better understand the possibility of a war like Trojan, it is useful to consider the historical context of the time. The period known as the Bronze Age late, around 1600 to 1200 BC, was an era of great change and conflict in the eastern Mediterranean. The Mycenaean civilizations in Greece and the Hittite civilizations in Anatolia were in constant interaction and often in conflict. The Hittite archives mention a city called Walusa, which many historians believe is Troy. These texts describe clashes between the Hittites and a confederation of states that may have included the Greeks. Furthermore, the collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations around 1200 BC could have been catalyzed by wars and mass migrations. It is possible that the story of the Trojan War is an amalgamation of various conflicts and events of this tumultuous time. In modern times, the Trojan War has been the subject of countless interpretations and adaptations. From movies and television series to novels and video games, the story continues to capture the public's imagination. These reinterpretations often mix historical facts with mythical elements, creating a rich and complex narrative. However, it is important to remember that each version brings its own perspective and often reflects the concerns and values of its time. So, was the Trojan War a myth or a reality? The most likely answer is that it was a mix of both. The city of Troy existed and was destroyed sometime in the 13th century BC, probably in a context of regional conflicts. However, the specific details and many of the characters and events described by Homer are probably literary inventions or exaggerations. What is certain is that the story of the Trojan War has left an indelible mark on Western culture. Through the centuries, it has served as a source of inspiration for countless works of art, literature, and philosophy. The legend of Troy reminds us of the importance of myths in the formation of our cultural identity and how, through critical study and research, we can unravel the truth behind the greatest stories. Thank you for joining me on this epic journey. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Until next time.